Hello everyone and welcome back to coffee time. How are y'all doing? I've got a mug that looks like a giraffe. I'm drinking some excellent coffee. But I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're also having an excellent coffee. Let me know what type of coffee you're drinking. Before I go too much further, if you like this shirt, this is a very good quality shirt. We sell excellent merchandise, but it is limited run. We currently have a shirt that is only available until Thursday. It's the Christmas. Now I have a Hellstorm bolt rifle. Ho, ho, ho. So don't miss out. You've got like 4 days to order it, and then it won't be available again, maybe for a long time. It might come back next year. It might not. But you will receive it in time for Christmas, so make sure you order it today. Or at least before Thursday. So we've kind of had like two coffee times that have kind of like linked together. And I think this is going to be like the final one that's kind of like linked to the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So obviously part of the saga of my videos, my coffee times, have been me getting banned from Reddit groups and then getting told off in Facebook groups. But there was an interesting post that came up that I wanted to like address and go over, which is kind of like the topic of today. That came up in the competitive 40k group, the one that I really like where everyone hates me. I love that group. It's great. I love the people who run it. I love the people in there, but they don't like me. There's an interesting thing that came up, and like the way this guy's worded the post was just like hilarious. And then the comment section, guys, you just love to see it. So we're going to go over that post today. We're going to have a look at some of the comments and then kind of like give our thoughts to this type of situation, I guess. So, interesting hypothetical scenario my friend asked me. Assuming there is a tournament with a time limit and playing against an unfamiliar army, never played it. If he asked his opponent what was the maximum possible / theoretical charge / threat range for a unit in his army, his opponent replied 24 inches. Pointing to his unit with a 12-inch move and a 12-inch charge. He even had an unknown force chart for his opponent to fill in, and sign stating maximum possible charge range was 24. All this can be replaced by witnesses who heard both questions and answer. This is like a really crucial part in this story, is because like the idea of someone signing to say that they can only move so far is just hilarious, and it's something that like most of the people in the comment section actually focused on, when that wasn't really like part of it. He was like hypothetically saying if you signed a contract saying this is how far you can move, but it was just so funny, like the idea of just like, mate, I want to move a unit, where do I sign? It was just hilarious. But anyway, however, during the game, opponent used strat for advance and charge and had additional ability to give more movement to pull off a 26-inch charge. Then my friend claimed the opponent lied to him to say that the maximum possible charge range was only 24-inch, when in fact it goes up to 32-inch with all strat and buffs. How does a judge resolve this situation? Limit the unit to a maximum 24-inch charge threat, allow my friend to readjust his movement and similar if he had known the full threat range, and readjust his movement similar if he had known, and adjusting all consequences moves too, like less shooting range if you want to be farther and give back casualties inflicted if shooting range. Would it be different if there were no signature by opponent acknowledging maximum charge range of 24 inches? Please note that sheet signing is only in hypothetical scenarios. Our judge knows exactly what happened. No he said / she said scenario. He can replace with other witnesses hearing what the question was. Edit. We're going to talk about the ITC Code of Conduct. So this is quite an interesting scenario. Obviously, the comment section was insane. So a lot of people had an opinion. A lot of people are taking the mick about this idea of signing. If you're in a tournament and your opponent makes you sign anything, just say no. Because usually it's going to end up bad for you. If you're the guy asking people to sign stuff at a tournament, just don't. Just don't go there. But overall, the situation is quite interesting because essentially their opponent has, rightfully or wrongfully so, the opponent has lied about what their unit can do. And like in a friendly game, you're just a bit of a knobhead if you do this. And what you should do is allow your opponent to move models back out of range. The problem is basically if you say I can charge 24 inches and then you pull off a 26-inch charge with a unit that you said could only make a 24-inch charge, you've cheated, essentially. Whether you knew that you could do that, whether you forgot, whether you remembered, you've cheated your opponent, because they can be like, okay, I'm going to go just over 24 so you can't charge me, and then suddenly they're in combat because you've not told them that you can actually go to more than 24. Suddenly you're in combat because your opponent's not told you that they can go more than 24, they've told you 24. So in this situation, in a like what one person being malicious at one point and being saying, I can only charge 24 inches and then charge a 26, they're cheating. In a game where you forget, this is also an issue because it's not cheating, but it's a foul, essentially. It's a foul move because you've said, I can only go 24. And then when it comes to it, you go, actually, I can actually go 26. I can actually go 26, yeah. So I'm going to get in. Again, in a casual game, it's just wrong and you wouldn't do it. And what you do is you go back to the turn before, you let your opponent redo his turn, you'd have to do all the shooting again. Because when it gets to this point, you're near the end, essentially the end, you're like more than halfway through one of the players' turns, and they essentially, by misguiding them, they've played their turn differently. Now, where this gets interesting is in a tournament, because the reason this guy's used the signing a contract type thing is to nullify the argument of, well, I asked him and it was 24 inch, he said, and then he'd be like,
no, I didn't, I said 32 and you've left them over 24. And I can still charge.
It's quite an interesting situation, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because as a TO, I wouldn't know what to do either. The guys rightfully brought up the ITC Code of Conduct, which under point 5, a player may never purposefully deceive another player by malicious misinformation, incomplete information, or vaguely stated information. A player who purposefully deceives or attempts to deceive another player will have committed a foul. Any pattern of accidental deception / misinformation can be considered a foul based on the judge's discretion. So essentially this means that if you tell them wrong, it's a foul, but if you say that you forgot that you could do that, then if the judge thinks you're lying, then he'll basically foul you as well. So the ITC Code of Conduct, if anyone doesn't know, is essentially like a rules or guidelines of how to play with good sportsmanship and how to make sure. It's kind of like some extra rules about how to be at the tabletop and how to act with your opponent, to kind of like the official guideline of like, don't be a knobhead. This is how you'll be penalised. And some events use this, some events don't. Not all of them do. You find that a lot of big events will use the ITC Code of Conduct because it's something that the TO can fall back on to kind of say, well, you're deceiving this player, so I'm going to ban you because of this. And it's kind of written down here. We're all following the same rules, so this is it. So without this, it's kind of awkward. But with this, I understand where this player is coming from, where it's like, my opponent told me one thing and then he did another. Now, that's an interesting argument, and I think in this situation, me personally, I would say that if you tell your opponent that you can only charge 24 inches, you can only then charge 24 inches for at least that turn. I don't know if you'd have to make it game wide, I don't know, that'd be quite interesting. But me personally, I'd say that if the person said they can only charge 24 inches and there's witnesses to back them up, or there's a signature, which they shouldn't have signed in the first place. If there's a signature to say that he said he was only going to charge 24 inches and then he can only charge 24 inches, at least that turn. Now, it gets interesting because there's a lot of people in this comment section. Obviously, I went through it quite fast. There's a lot of people in this comment section that's kind of like saying, well, you should know your opponent's army. You should know the tricks because you're in a tournament, you're a high-level tournament, you should know all the tricks. Now, I think there's quite a large gap between asking what your opponent's army does, asking them at the table, and then them doing a got ya or a gotcha, we call it. It's kind of like, if you don't know what that phrase means, it's kind of like where I do something or I don't give up enough information and don't let on something where I can catch my opponent out and beat them that way. So the example of a got you is kind of like when you catch someone out by misleading them. For example, if I like pile a model in near a character like that's kind of like jumbled up with loads of other models, and I kind of go, I'm going to pile in here, I'm going to charge here, there's no repercussion to this, is there? And your opponent doesn't say anything, then he goes, oh, I'm going to heroically intervene or something like that. Or you go, I might deep strike here. There's nothing you can do to like stop me doing that, is there? Or there's like nothing you can do in repercussion. Your opponent doesn't say anything. Then they have a stratagem that's like, oh, I can shoot you when you deep strike or something like that. That's what we call a gotcha, and it happens frequently, especially in the mid tables of tournaments. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's something you have to watch out for. Where if your opponent doesn't give up the information, they probably want to try and catch you out, and that's kind of like their play style. It does happen at tournaments. It doesn't really happen at the top tables because most people know armies, but especially when there's like a meta, people know the top armies, they know how they work, so they don't really find the gotchas. But there's something like, if I didn't ask my opponent how far a unit could charge and I go more than 24 inches and they can advance and charge, that's kind of be a bit of a gotcha, but it's because I didn't ask. The reason I'm going over this is because there's a lot of people in the comment section on this post, which is very interesting, where they're kind of like saying, well, my opponent should know what my army does, because I shouldn't have to reveal a whole battle plan to him. I shouldn't have to tell him how my army works. He should know and he should be prepared for it. Where I think that's like kind of a wrong attitude. Whenever I go to a tournament, and whenever I've played someone at a tournament, we'll go over each other's army list. And we'll be like, for example, we'll go over my very small Blood Angels list, okay? I've got Mephiston, he's got a Psyker. He's got a psychic power called Wings of Sanguinius, which lets him move. I've got some troops, I've got some tactical marines. I've got Sanguinary Guard, they're a really good combat unit. They can fly, they can deep strike. I've got Sanguinary Priest, because he's got a rule where he can put a unit in the Assault Doctrine. And then I've got an Ancient as well, and he gives him +1 to hit. And that's kind of like it. I've told my opponent what my stuff does, and I'm not kind of trying to catch him out because I've explained what the rules are. I've given him a very brief overview. I might have some other tricks. I don't know. But the example is I'm kind of explaining to my opponent, like, roughly what my army does. I'm not telling him the battle plan. I'm not giving up too much information. I'm giving him enough information where he knows what the army does so he can counteract any plays. But also, if I did have any gotcha moments, then I've kind of told him what could happen. For example, I've got a really good combat unit. From turn 1, I can put them in the Assault Doctrine, which if you're a Space Marine player or if you know 40k, putting a very good combat unit in the Assault Doctrine from turn 1 is very powerful, usually. Now, for example, Blood Angels don't have it, but they used to have a stratagem called upon Wings of Fire, where they can pick up a unit that's got a jetpack and then drop it down again. Now, if I did still have that, I'd tell my opponent, they've got jump packs. I've also got stratagem for Wings of Fire, so I can pick them up and redeploy them at the end of the movement phase, and then they're going to get a charge with like +2 to charge with the litany, and I kind of like just give him a quick overview. But if I said, oh yeah, I've got Sanguinary Guard, they move 12. Now, to me, that says the Sanguinary Guard move 12, and they can charge up to 12. It doesn't tell me there's a stratagem where I can redeploy them. It doesn't tell me that I can get +2 to charge. I haven't even told my opponent that my chapter tactic gives me +1 to charge, for example. And it's kind of like, I think the vibe in this comment section, and maybe a vibe with maybe some of you guys at home, is maybe follows the same vibe I've got. Maybe it follows this vibe, which is quite interesting, where it's kind of like a gotcha to me. If someone does a gotcha, you're not only not fun to play, but in my opinion, you shouldn't be playing at tournaments, because that isn't like how you should be playing a game. Because at the end of the day, it's a game, right? Most people go to a tournament for fun. That's kind of like first thing why most people go to a tournament, because they enjoy it. And if you're going up and making all these like people have feel bad moments where it's like, oh, I could have won that game, but my opponent didn't tell me had this magical trick, which was just like waiting there, and he didn't tell me at all, and I wasn't prepared for it, and he caught me out. And that's kind of like, it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Now, I think again, there's like kind of like two ways to it, because if my opponent doesn't tell me, then I've got to kind of make sure I ask the right questions as well. Now, if I ask the right questions and my opponent still doesn't tell me, that's a foul, in my opinion. If I say, I'm going to set up 24 inches away, is your maximum charge 24 inches? And he says yes, and then it isn't, that's a foul. In my opinion, you might disagree. If I ask him and then he charges more than 24 inches, that's a gotcha, and that's a foul, in my opinion. If I ask him and he tells me one thing and then does it another thing, that's just cheating, straight up cheating, in my opinion, because you've told your opponent one thing and then you've lied to his face. If you have to lie to your opponent, you're a cheater, in my opinion. But it's quite interesting. I mean, the problem is when you kind of like making these rules, like, where do you draw the line? What if I say, it could be quite interesting on the flip side if you wanted to be nasty as well, because if I say, oh, I can charge up to 32 inches and he deploys like 24 inches away and I try and make the charge, he could be like, oh, well, you said you could only charge 24. And then it becomes a he said, she said conversation, which is always difficult to get out of. So I wonder what do you guys think to this situation? I think it's a whole load of crap, basically. The way this guy is like come up with his signature thing was just hilarious, but where do we draw the line? The problem is as well is when you've got like inexperienced players and they forget their rules, it can come across as cheating and come across as foul play. So where do we draw the line? What do you guys think? What counts as like misinformed or unexperienced? What counts as lying? What counts as gotcha? What counts as being a knobhead? What should get you banned? What should get you kicked out of a tournament? What should be a yellow card? Let me know down in the comments. It's quite an interesting situation that's always developing. And it's kind of hard to like explain it because there's so many scenarios that are very similar that you could like bounce off, and it's like, I don't know, just don't be a knobhead in tournaments, basically. That's probably my takeaway. Don't be a knobhead. play fair. And that's probably about it. So otherwise, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Make sure you look at this graph. If you're on the wrong side of it, make sure you click subscribe. If you enjoy this type of content, you want to support the channel, you can always join the channel, which is just below as well. Or you can do it at Hellstormwargaming.co.uk. You get extra videos every single week. We've got an Orcs versus World Eaters battle report coming out this week on Premium exclusive only. So if you are interested in that, then do go check it out. Thank you very much for subscribing. If you want to get yourself a new shirt, a Christmas jumper like this one but better, then make sure you order that before Thursday, because they won't be available after that. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye now.